Right now, inside your body, a set of genes is switched on that didn't begin in your species at all. They trace back to a different kind of human, one that vanished from this planet tens of thousands of years ago. You've been told there's only one kind of human, us, the final winner of evolution, standing alone at the top. That story is wrong, and the truth is stranger than extinction. For most of the last 300,000 years, we were not the only humans here. At least 6 separate species shared the Earth with us, as different from each other as lions are from tigers. And the real mystery isn't why the others disappeared, it's why a piece of each of them is still alive inside you. Most people know about Neanderthals, stocky, broad-shouldered, heavy brow ridges. The standard story goes like this. Homo sapiens shows up, smarter, more adaptable, and the Neanderthals just couldn't compete. It's a clean story. It makes us the winners of a fair fight. But in 2010, a geneticist named Svante Pabo published a finding that turned that story upside down. Pabo had spent over 20 years trying to extract DNA from bones 40,000 years old. That's roughly like trying to read a book that was burned and buried underground for 1,000 generations. But he pulled it off. His team sequenced the Neanderthal genome almost completely, and when they compared it to the genome of modern humans, they found something nobody expected. If you're not of purely African descent, you carry Neanderthal DNA, about 1 to 4% of your genome. That sounds small, but in genome terms, that's thousands of genes, and there's only one explanation. At some point, sapiens and Neanderthals crossed paths and had children together. But that's not even the strangest part. That same year, news came from a cave in Siberia, Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains. Researchers had found a tiny fragment of a child's finger bone, about the size of a coin. They extracted DNA from it, and it was neither Neanderthal nor sapiens. It was a third human species that science had never known existed. They named it Denisovan, after the cave. And the Denisovans also left descendants among the living. People from Papua New Guinea and Melanesia carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA, and Tibetans carry a specific gene that lets their bodies function normally at high altitude, with oxygen levels that would incapacitate most people. That gene doesn't exist in any other population on Earth. It came from the Denisovans. Which means Tibetans can live in the Himalayas today partly because thousands of years ago, people in their lineage had children with another human species. Stop and think about the scale of what that means. At various points over the past 300,000 years, at least 6 species of the genus Homo walked this earth. Neanderthals across Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans across Central and Eastern Asia, Homo floresiensis on the Indonesian island of Flores, just over 3 feet tall, with a brain roughly the size of a grapefruit. Homo luzonensis in the Philippines, discovered only in 2019. Homo naledi in South Africa, with a bizarre mix of primitive and modern anatomy. And us, Homo sapiens, emerging from Africa around 300,000 years ago. By 12,000 years ago, all the others were gone. And here is the part almost nobody talks about. The standard explanation is competition. Sapiens were smarter, more flexible, better at working together. Maybe we had more complex language. Maybe we outhunted them. Maybe we brought diseases they had no immunity to. Every single one of those theories has serious pushback. None of them is proven. But there is something science has proven, and it changes everything. The DNA data says the disappearance of other human species wasn't a story of replacement. It was a story of absorption. Neanderthals didn't just die. Part of them became part of us. Denisovans didn't just vanish. Their genes are still running inside people across Asia and Oceania. The line between us and them turned out to be far blurrier than scientists thought even 20 years ago. Which is exactly why the question, why are we the only species left, is the wrong question. The right question is different. Were we ever truly a separate species? Or were we just the branch of a larger tree, flexible enough to absorb all the others? Let's look at Neanderthals more closely, because their story turned out to be far more complicated than we were taught. For 300,000 years, Neanderthals lived across Europe and Asia, and they did just fine. They buried their dead. Some burial sites contain traces of pollen, possibly flowers, placed beside the body. They cared for their sick and injured. Skeletons with healed fractures make that clear. They made jewelry from eagle talons. That's been proven by excavations in Krapina, Croatia, 130,000 years before sapiens even arrived there. Neanderthals weren't dumb brutes. They were a different kind of human. So why did they disappear right when sapiens arrived in Europe? Science doesn't have a single answer, but the data points in one direction. Neanderthals didn't vanish overnight. The process took roughly 5,000 years. 5,000 years is 200 generations. Too long for a genocide, too slow for a pandemic. During those 5,000 years, both species lived in the same territory, hunted the same animals, and were fully aware of each other. And sometimes they had children together. Gradually, Neanderthal numbers shrank, not because they were wiped out, but because they were absorbed. Those who mixed with sapiens produced offspring with blended genes. Generation after generation, the share of Neanderthal DNA in the population kept shrinking. The last person walking the Earth who was more Neanderthal than sapiens disappeared roughly 40,000 years ago. Does that mean Neanderthals went extinct, or that they dissolved into us? Pablo, who received the Nobel Prize in 2022 for exactly this discovery, is careful about how he puts it. Maybe the question isn't who survived. Maybe the question is where exactly we draw the line between species. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable part of this story. When people say we're the only human species, they're assuming there's a clean boundary between species. But in nature, that boundary doesn't exist. Species aren't rooms with locked doors. They're clouds with blurry edges. Wolves and dogs are classified as different species, but they interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Coyotes and wolves hybridize in the wild. Polar bears and grizzlies produce fertile hybrids called pizzly bears. Neanderthals and sapiens, different species, but they interbred and produced fertile children. Scientists call this introgression, when genes from one population permanently flow into another through hybridization. And here's what matters. Introgression wasn't random noise. Neanderthal genes in our genome are specifically linked to immune response against certain viruses. Some of those inherited variants are associated with lower risk of severe infection. Others helped early modern humans adapt to the cold climates of Europe, a continent they'd just arrived at from warm Africa. The other human species didn't just coexist with us, they handed us tools for survival. So where does that leave the original question? Why are we the only ones left? The honest answer? Science doesn't fully know. Most likely, it was a combination of factors: climate shifts, resource competition, disease, chance. But the DNA data adds something important. Sapiens didn't survive because we were better than everyone else. We survived, and we absorbed everyone else. A piece of every species we ever encountered is now living inside us. In the body of anyone with non-African ancestry, several thousand Neanderthal genes are active right now, shaping immune response, affecting metabolism, influencing how the body handles cold. Neanderthals didn't disappear without a trace. They just live differently now. When Pablo published his data, a journalist wrote, "Turns out Neanderthals didn't die. They became us." It's a beautiful line, but it's not quite right. The more accurate version is this: the line between us and them was never as clean as we imagined it to be. We are not the only species that was lucky enough to survive. We are the species in which all the others survived. Cartold. The world is more interesting than you think. Subscribe to the channel and check out our next videos.